Good morning, Literature and Composition 2. Ms. Wissinger here with a modeling video where we're working on claim and development with supporting details. So for my modeling purposes, I read Building a New Movement from the Old, which is the text right above the one that you're going to do for independent practice. All right. So I've already read through and I've identified my claim. Now, I remember that the claim is that overarching big takeaway message, right? So the claim here is equity in schooling is a necessity that must be fought for tirelessly. I think that was the message that the author was trying to put forth to us through the text. Now I need to talk about that, right? So I need to identify the supporting details, and these are the instances of supporting details that the rubric alludes to, right? Back up here to the rubric, talks about people, places, events, ideas, and experiences. So I have them here so that I can keep track of them. And then I need to talk about how they evolved over time. And then I need to talk about how they work together, right? The relationship together. So I wanted to just give you a few tips. So people, when we're looking for people that they used as supporting details, a lot of times they're people that are mentioned multiple times, or also people that are giving quotes, right? So here we are. I'm kind of just scanning again. I've already read this one time all the way through, right? So we have some quotes here from people, right? But then you kind of move on to other people. So we have Jesse Sharkey here as a teacher, and then Jackson Potter. But I'm going to say that they're more used as like delegates for the core, right? Because I keep seeing core. Core's right here, core's right here, right? So let's see. What can we take? So Potter's mentioned again here. So I'm going to talk about Potter actually. So I think it was Jackson Potter. Jackson Potter. And this was a student. Um, who led a walkout and then became a teacher for Chicago Public Schools, right? And then formed core. Okay, so we're talking about development, right? We're seeing how this person develops in terms of supporting details, right? All right. So we are going to continue on. So this is in terms of places. This is Southside Chicago, right? And how does that develop? We talk about multiple schools here. So we talk about Whitney Young High School. And then we move on, and there was another school they wanted to close. Dyett High School was mentioned, where there was violence. It was weird. They actually had a brand new gym donated to them from ESPN, and then never used it because they wanted to phase it out. What was the elementary school? Lakeview was the other school they were talking about. All right, so I'm looking for it. I know I had it. Mollison. There it is. Mollison was the elementary school. Okay, so those are different places that were talked about and used as supporting details in the fact that equity is something that you need to continuously fight for, right? All right, so events. I want to identify events. So events would be the walkout in 1995, right? The Diet Restorative Justice Program. Remember, this is after reading it one time all the way through, not looking for these things. So you read it one time all the way through for understanding, and then it's much easier to take your graphic organizer and go back in and grab those supporting details after you've identified the big takeaway, which is the claim, right? And Ben's, oh, that was a big one. The march to the mayor's house. They marched to the mayor's house demanding that there's equity in schools. They were pointing out the difference between like their suburban counterpart school, and the suburban counterpart school had like all kinds of different art programs. They had better facilities versus the one that was in the inner city. So that was the march was highlighted a lot here. Yeah, and that's what it ended with. All right, so I feel confident that those are the big events that were talked about. The ideas, I think the big ideas were like the violence, the inequities in curriculum, um, and I think those were kind of the big ideas that were talked about, as well as the facilities, right? Like what the schools actually looked like, and then experiences. We can talk about. Let's see. I like this one where they were talking about the redevelopment um, as an experience. So this was a parent that was talking about how the school district was redeveloping the school district by closing schools. And then if you look, right, these are important too. When you see quotes that are like highlighted as, larger or bolded for whatever reason, pay attention to those because they're repeated for a reason. They must have something to do with the larger takeaway, right? So this one says, how do you kill a community? First, you take away the housing and then you take away the schools. So here, right here, is where that comes from. How do you kill a community, says Taylor, her voice rising in indignation. First, you take away the housing, and then you take away the schools. So the fact that they felt it was important enough to repeat and make a lot larger, right? We should definitely be using that as a supporting detail, and that's where I just pulled from with the redevelopment. So I can even kind of like elaborate on that. So experiences parent voicing concerns of killing the community by taking away schools, right? Okay. So now that we have all of these kind of identified and we've talked about the evolvement because we've talked about things from the beginning, the middle, and the end. And we can also kind of talk about, overall how these things evolve throughout the text. So how did they interact with one another? That's the next important question, right? So, for your purposes, I would focus on at least three that you're super confident in to talk about how they interact with each other. No less than two. No less than two, because when you're talking about something that interacts with one another, you need at least two, right? They have to come together in some way, shape, or form. If you want to challenge yourself and you want to talk about all five types of supporting details, feel free. But I think a great number to kind of like rest with is three. So Jackson Potter. Okay, so the claim of equity in schooling being being a necessity that must be fought for tirelessly, is supported by the interaction of, I'm going to go with the people, events, and ideas that are developed within the text. Now I need to go back in my answer and I need to talk about how those things interact, right? So by people of prominence or importance, right? You can use either word, being mentioned as Jackson Potter, that's our example, right? They really led the major events that supported this overall claim. Jackson Potter not only was a student who led the walkout, which now see people events, right? But other people involved in the text helped lead the other major events of creating the restorative justice program and the march to the mayor's house. I would even go back, and for time purposes, I'm not gonna, but I would even go back and since we mentioned other people, pull from their, pull from the text, exact names, right? So we've talked about the events and we've talked about the people. So these events also interact with the larger ideas that support the claim of violence, inequities, curriculum, and facilities, as they were reactions to, as they were reactions to the they were reactions to such inequities, right? So because these people felt so strongly, they did these events, right? And it was because of the ideas that were highlighted, right? Because of the violence in the ideas were really the prompting factors to get the people who were used as supporting details to engage in the events. So I want you to be careful here. Not careful, but I want you to be mindful of the fact that you need to use certain wording, right? So when we're talking about relationships and interacting, you want to use the word interacting, right? So I want to make sure, I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure that I can, that I've used the word interact and that I could possibly change up a word for interact. So the claim of equity in schooling being a necessity that must be fought for tirelessly is supported by the interaction of the people, events, and ideas that develop within the text. So I have development, right? By the people of prominence or importance being mentioned, they really lead the major events, that supported this overall claim. Jackson Potter not only was a student, so here, by the people of prominence, importance being mentioned, they really lead the major that supported this overall claim. That I'm going to add that interact with one another to support this overall claim. Right. So then at least I'm telling the reader, like, hey, I know to earn a 4, I need to talk about what the supporting details were, how they evolve, and then how they interact with each other. Okay. And then I continue with these events also interact with the larger ideas. So I have the interaction there, right? So that would be what I submit. And then just to scroll back up here, I have identified the elements. So I've identified the claim. So I earned a 2, right? I've identified the elements, which are the different supporting details. So I earned a 3, right? And then I looked at how they evolved, how they changed and interacted with each other throughout the text with direct textual support linking back to the text. Okay, so I would have earned a 4 on here. So hopefully this model video helps you, and let us know if you have any questions. Have a great day.